Okay, so before we start talking a little bit about backup and recovery, perhaps you can give us just a little brief overview of the company itself.
Sure, happy to, Phil. So we're Bacula Systems. We're one of the newer players in the backup and recovery space. We've been going about 10 years now. We're a worldwide player, got customers all around the world, people also in the company all around the world. And so very much focused only on the backup and recovery space. And so we wake up every morning trying to figure out how to do that better. And we go to bed every night knowing that our customers can sleep well because we've done quite a good job during the day. So that's our company.
Okay, and obviously talking a bit more then about the backup and recovery side, I think with a particular focus on the MSP market, if I'm right.
Yeah.
I guess what are, in the sort of high level view, what are some of the main issues that people need to be aware of when they're looking at the topic, which, you know, obviously has been around for a while, but it's continuously evolving.
Yeah, you're right. It's been around for a while, and some people think it's quite a static kind of a marketplace, but it's actually incredibly dynamic because as all the technologies keep moving, then of course the need to back up all those technologies also evolves. So it's not so long ago that MSPs were a new thing in the marketplace, and so now of course they're pervasive. Even some of the bigger enterprises run their businesses, their IT businesses, as if they were an MSP. So some of the specific demands of a managed service provider are they typically are handling very large infrastructures, often for specific customers in a very dedicated way with dedicated service level agreements. They're typically operating in a situation where they don't have a lot of time for backup. They can't take systems offline. You can imagine taking booking.com offline while you do a backup. You know, it's just not going to happen. So they can't take systems offline to do backup. And they're also taking more and more of the, particularly in the cloud space, more and more of the customer's infrastructure under their management. So they can end up managing cloud infrastructure, hosted systems, on-premise systems, endpoint systems, a whole host of different stuff. So what they need is flexibility. They need a supplier that can cover all of their technologies, some of them quite old technologies. And they need a supplier who's got a pricing model that fits in line, particularly with the MSP model, which is a pay-for-service model. And so to address those, we've developed Bacula Enterprise Edition that covers all those needs, and we, from a technical point of view, and we have a pricing model that charges on a usage basis also for those MSPs that want to do that. So it's a nice business. It's a very fast-growing part of our business, and as more and more organizations move their business to the cloud, we end up with more and more customers through those managed service providers.
Okay, and in terms of the technologies, I mean, AI is a big thing, high-performance computing. Yeah. Are they putting extra demands on the MSPs and the sort of backup and recovery model in general?
Yes, it comes in many different ways. You can almost think about any new technology area and it's generating a demand for the MSP and for the enterprises. So we shouldn't forget a big part of our business is also with larger enterprises. So what you see with AI is a great example, is increasing amounts of data and the need for very fast analysis of that data and of course very strong protection of that data. So you see more and more data. But what you also see going on is a trend in virtualization. So it used to be that VMware was the de facto standard for virtual machines. Now you have half a dozen different vendors in this space, all providing very good solutions from Red Hat, KVM, a whole host of different players. So you have a breadth of capability that needs to be backed up. And then of course you have the newer technologies like Docker and Kubernetes, which are in many ways an existential threat to containerization. So you have this kind of change taking place with these newer technologies. And so if you're an MSP, you have to figure out how can I cover all of these growing and changing and demanding needs in an environment where the data continues to escalate. And of course, we think we have a very good solution to help the MSPs and the enterprises who are facing very similar challenges address those needs.
And I guess other sort of issues that maybe have always been there, but maybe are heightened at the moment is, I mean, security, you can't get away from that. And I guess if MSPs are offering the service, their customers need to be comfortable with, you know, what's going on there. And also clearly more and more data being stored, there's a cost attached to that. So that's another consideration.
Yeah, exactly right, Phil. And I guess we're all a bit familiar with what happened in the press recently with Twitter and the attacks that they've unfortunately subdued. The reality is that could be any organization that gets attacked. I mean, there's more and more people out there attacking, and there's a wider and wider threat radius that's being exposed. So yes, and if you're in our business, what is the most important thing you can give to a customer? The most important thing, and frankly what every customer needs, is to know that they have a copy of their data and their systems securely held, so that if something does go wrong, if they do get attacked, if they have to take their systems offline to repair something, then they have got a copy of all their data and all their systems to bring back online to service their customers and to address their markets. And that's what we do as a business. We provide the software that enables organizations to do that, so that CIOs and business managers, business leaders, can sleep at night, knowing that they're not going to be, they're not going to face an existential threat because of these kind of attacks. And that's a very nice business for us to be in, of course, because it's a heartwarming business. We bring such good value to the organizations we serve. You can tell if you look on the website, you'll see some of the customers that we're serving are some of the most data secure organizations around the world, people like NATO, NASA, and others. So that they choose our system because it is well known for its security, and it's a key part of every single thing we do.
And just on the cost front, I'm thinking that tiering, well, sorry, not thinking, you know, tiering obviously exists. So do you help the MSPs manage that on behalf of their customers, so that within reason, clearly, you know, dynamic environments, things changing all the time, but as far as possible, help people store data where it's the, you know, optimum place in terms of performance and or cost?
Because we're one of the newer players in the marketplace, then we've always come in with a new way of thinking, both technically in terms of the architecture of our product, but also commercially in terms of how we price it. So we price our software on a subscription basis, okay? And we've only ever been in that model. Many of the more traditional players are frantically trying to move to that model now. That's not an easy transition for many reasons. But being in the subscription business, we charge for where we think the value of our software is. And that's in backing up the machines, virtual machines, physical machines, hosted, whatever, backing up the machines of our customers, whether they be enterprises or MSPs. The traditional way of charging for backup has been by data volume or by sockets or some other, what we might call today, esoteric kind of ways. And data used to be a driver of complexity, but it's not a driver of complexity anymore, not when you look at the amount of storage that can be taken on an SSD today. So our model has always been based on machines and the number of machines backed up. Customers love that because it's very simple. It enables them also to predict how their costs are going to go. It's very difficult to predict how the data volume is going to grow. So it's very hard to predict if your cost is based on data volume. It's very hard to predict what your future costs will be. But if you're basing your prediction on cost on the number of machines, that's a much more simple algorithm. And I think it's one of the reasons we have such a high retention rate is our customers see the value they get. It's very simple to calculate, and they know that they're not going to be price gouged by us as their data volume grows, because it's not part of our pricing equation.
And in terms of the backup and recovery, once upon a time, backup was the sort of main thing everyone talked about, forgetting that actually you're backing it up for a reason, because you might need to recover some of that data. Do you think that recovery bit is now fully understood, or do you think there's still too much reliance on the fact that we backed it up, so I'm sure we'll be able to get it back, and all of a sudden when they try, it's maybe not as easy, or again there may be a price attached to it depending on where that data has been stored?
No, it's a good question, because in the past everybody focused on backup. In fact, even the market's called the backup market, and the only reason people do backup is so they can recover, exactly like you just said, so they can do the restore. And so the faster and easier you can do the restore, the better. And that's what we pride ourselves in, the ability to do that. So I think you're absolutely right when you say looking at the restoration part is the key part. How can you bring back systems up online and make sure the data is recovered as fast as possible? So we have certain modules in our backup solution, bare metal recovery, where you can restore to new systems, whether it's Windows, Linux, or whatever, that enable customers to get back up online fast if it's a full recovery they need to do. But if it's just a simple file restore and they've got millions of files, they can pick out that one file from their backup and restore just that one file. And that saves enormous amounts of time. And of course, it's a great service for customers and enterprise, whether it be enterprises or MSPs.
And we've talked, I think, more about the MSPs, but you've referenced sort of end users as well. So, I mean, are there any differences between what you offer those two sets of customers? And I mean, do they have many different needs, or is backing up and recovering the same whether you're an MSP or, you know, a large enterprise customer?
There's a lot of similarities. Let's be clear. The base platforms for both companies are the same. They want to be able to back up and restore machines quickly, efficiently, safely, and know the data is protected. So this piece is quite key. How they do it and how they charge for it is often different between an enterprise and an MSP. So an MSP will typically have a service mindset. So the amount of data, the number of systems, those kind of things will be what they're charging their customers for. So in that case, we will support them by charging them similarly for their usage. On the enterprise space, you typically have more of a mindset of, okay, what are we going to be doing for the next year in our infrastructure? How do we budget and plan to do the backup of that infrastructure? And so they're a little more static, I would say, in terms of what their needs are, and they're a little bit easier to plan. From our point of view, they love our subscription model because that gives them a full view of their costs for a year. They can plan the modules they need, the services they need, and once it's fixed for the year, they can run. Whether the data goes up or down, whether the number of systems goes up or down, you know, we can recalibrate that as we go through the subscription renewal at the end of the year. So there are a lot of similarities, quite a few differences, particularly on the commercial fronts, I would say. Having said that, a lot of enterprises are moving to use the MSP model in their own organization. So a central IT department may be charging out its services to the divisions of that organization. And we see some of that as well. And maybe I would say even a trend of that today.
Okay, and I know the company is, I'm not sure whether I'd call you a champion, but you certainly talk a lot about open technologies. So yes. I know, you know, it divides opinion as to how important it is or not, etc. But just some thoughts as to, you know, the company's position on open technology.
Yeah, so a couple of things I think are worth saying. One is our roots are in open source. We have an open source version of our product. We contribute a lot of software from Bacula Systems into the open source version. It's something we're very proud to do. And the open source version has been downloaded millions of times and is used all throughout the world. It astonishes me sometimes where our open source version pops up. So it's a very important part of our ecosystem. We get a chunk of our revenue, probably 15–20% of our revenue, coming from open source customers upgrading to the enterprise version as they have grown and they need support or they need plugins or they need different topics. So the open source world is quite important. I would say the trend up until probably about 5 years ago was maybe a little bit away from open source in the enterprise space. And for a variety of different reasons, I think the enterprise software vendors did quite a good job at trying to close that marketplace down. But as I look at all the new technologies, containers, Kubernetes, AI, all of these have open source roots, just like we. And so there's a pendulum swinging back to the open source world. And frankly, that helps us. And we will continue to run two paths, contributing to the open source product and also running the enterprise version for enterprises and MSPs. So for me, it's a trend that's coming back and getting stronger as I look at the marketplace
Okay, and just before we finish, maybe without giving away any sort of trade secrets or whatever, it'd be nice to know what's on the roadmap, and whether it's in terms of sort of product solution offerings or just company expansion plans. If you can give us a bit of a sort of handle on that, maybe.
Sure. In terms of let's talk about the product, because at the end of the day, our whole growth is based on the great product we have. That's the key, folks. We would not be where we are today with the customers we have today if it wasn't for the great product we have. And we've taken a leadership position in the Docker and Kubernetes world, and we will continue to do that. We've taken a leadership position in the number of hypervisors that we support, and we will continue to do that. You'll see a stronger and stronger focus in the Red Hat and OpenShift world, and we'll continue to push more and more in that space as more and more products become available in that space. So basically, you'll see us tracking all the new technologies and ensuring that our customers can back up and restore safely all those new technologies. A few years ago, we established our company in the US, and that's growing very nicely for us. We'll see other expansion into having local entities in some of the other countries around the world. But in the meantime, we continue to grow very successfully with the model we're in. I'm very proud that even in these difficult COVID times, where our company has not laid off or furloughed any employees, we have no plans to do that. Our growth continues very successfully, and we're happy to be in the situation we're in, and I would say very fortunate as a result of the work by many people over many years.
Okay, well, that's a lovely sort of introduction to yourselves and a bit about the backup and recovery. So thanks very much for your time, Frank.
No, thank you. It's good talking to you, Phil. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.